welcome back, or welcome for the first time if you're a first time viewer. Two Page for the Life. Here's where we open up another chapter. This one will be chapter 9. Chapter 9, Page and the Prompt. Page and the Prompt. It's a session where I, Elliott Page, self proclaimed modern day philosopher, uses an AI chatbot, this one being Google Gemini, uh, to help, be my co-host and research assistant and diving into certain curious topics that I have and want to get to the bottom of. This one being marriage. This episode is going to be about marriage. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining. We're gonna have a fun discussion here. All right, let's get into it. You feel me? Okay. First question I have. Before marriages were tied to the government, what constituted someone being considered married? Fair question, right? Fair question. Let's see what chat has for us. That is such a great place to start because it completely flips our modern paperwork first perspective on its head. For the vast majority of human history, marriage wasn't a certificate you filed with the state. It was a social and communal performance. If you're looking at the era before government or even formal church bureaucracy took over, being married came down to these three pillars. Okay, before I go into reading the rest of this, I want y'all to keep it. The reason I kind of brought up this topic is because I feel like nowadays, for one, I feel like marriage is being looked at through a negative lens. Maybe because people before them, maybe their parents' marriage didn't succeed, or they look at some of the celebrity marriages. Most of them don't succeed. Most of them don't even last long. And now social media, you have these gender wars and things of these nature. The social commentary around it. It's not always in the most positive light. And I think that we have become very frivolous with our bodies, with who we lay down with. And knowing what I kind of looked up maybe like 2 years ago, what actually constituted as marriage? I know from reading the Bible that in the Bible, if you laid down with somebody, you slept next to someone in that bed, y'all were married. There's a lot of sleeping around going around here. But I think we've kind of lost sight of like, wow, this is a powerful experience, a powerful, like a connection that we're having with this person and being bonded by us, having an exchange with our bodies, intimacy and things of that nature. Not just we went to a courthouse and got it on paper. Like, no, what we actually did with that person mattered tremendously, given that could be your husband or wife just by laying down with them, sleeping with them. Okay. It says the verba de presente. Verba de presenti. Somebody help me out with that pronunciation. Mutual consent, basically. In many cultures, including much of medieval Europe, you were married the second you both said, I take you as my spouse, in the present tense. No priest, no judge, no witnesses required. This was a private contract. If you said, I will take you, that was just an engagement. But I do take you was the finish line. Okay. So basically a matter of words, I take that basically like almost like saying, like say it says, if you said I will take you, that was just an engagement. If you said I will love you, I feel like that could be on the same lines of that. Like, oh, you're kind of proposing to me. You're saying you're making a commitment. And then if you say, like it says, but I do take you, being okay, let's be married, let's get married. I take that as like saying, hey, I do love you, right? Because we throw that word out there or those words out there a lot. Hey, I love you. But man, that's what it was back then. You know, it was is in medieval Europe. If you just said those words, y'all were married. Um, okay, another way: public recognition and holding out. Since there were no databases, the community was the record. If you moved in together, called each other husband and wife in a town square, and your neighbors treated you as a unit, you were married. This is the origin of common law marriage. It was about reputation and shared life rather than a ritual. It was about reputation and shared life rather than a ritual. If you moved in together and called each other husband and wife in the town square, and your neighbors treated you as such, y'all were married. Wow, man. If them folks know about you, if them folks know about you, you were married. There you go. Y'all are a unit. Okay, what's the third way? The exchange of a wed. The word wedding actually comes from the Anglo-Saxon word wed, which means a pledge or a gift, like a ring or even a piece of property given to the bride's family to seal the deal. It was a business transaction that signaled a change in social status. And if I'm not mistaken, that basically that exchange that pledge or a gift, isn't that the same as a dowry? I think a dowry is when like the bride's father would give you, usually in like the those agricultural societies where say how much livestock and how much farmland you had represented how much wealth you had. Like if the father of the bride, you know, signed off on you guys being married and things of that nature, a dowry was essentially a gift, you know, of to the newlywed couple. Um, you giving the father giving, like say, oh, I'll give you 10 cows, you know, and you two be off on your way. Which I think from that came the whole traditional, yeah, the father will pay for the wedding type of thing, and I believe that's a dowry. I think that's what that last part is talking about. So it said it's wild to think that for centuries you could basically self-marry just by being vocal about it. But this created a nightmare for inheritance. Imagine trying to prove your parents you were married 20 years later when there's no paper trail. I'm trying to imagine that, but why 20 why would I need to prove to my parents that I'm married? Like, unless I was as a habitual liar as a child as a child to them, why would they not believe that I said, yeah, hey, this is my wife? Why do I got to show you papers on that? Okay, moving on. Next question. When did marriages become tied to the government and why? When did marriages become tied to the government and why? This is the exact moment where the story turns from a romance into a legal thriller. Whoa. For a long time, the state was happy to let the church or local villages handle marriages. But as nations grew more complex, the government realized that marriage was the skeleton of the economy. It decided who owned what, who was a citizen, and who was responsible for the kids. I can understand that. Here is the when and why of the government takeover. The big shift. Lord Hardwicke's Marriage Act of 1753. When there were earlier ripples, the 1753, oh, while there were earlier ripples, the 1753 Marriage Act in England is often cited as a definitive divorce between private consent and state control. Before this, you could have a clandestine marriage, meaning just the two of you and a bottle of wine. A bottle of wine. After this, if you didn't have a formal ceremony in a church with witnesses and a record in a registry, the law basically said that's not a marriage. It's just a roommate situation. Wow. It is a roommate situation, which essentially is what we see a lot of today. You know, people just yeah, glorify roommates. Uh, why did why did the state want in? The government didn't step in to protect love. They stepped in to protect tax revenue and property lines. Boy, it's all about that mighty dollar, ain't it? The inheritance nightmare. If a wealthy landowner died and three different women claimed to be his secret wife, The legal system would grind to a halt. The state needed a paper trail to know exactly who inherited the gold and the land. Ah. So you had some peace. You had some. So look, there's nothing new under the sun. Even back then, you had certain women, gold diggers, pretty much. I mean, that's how I read that. Gold diggers saying like, nah, I I belong to him. They wanted some of that inheritance. They wanted to, you know, um, which I ain't all the way mad at, just because back then, just think of the times back then, man. Women had nothing to their name, nothing. Your wealth was tied to who you were with. You get what I'm saying? So I put that more on the man than the woman, so to speak. Back in those days, today days is different because women do have a way to be independent for themselves. They're not relying. The social system isn't set up how it was back then to where they have rights. They have ways of building wealth for themselves. So you don't need to try to um, just go there. You don't have to be after a man's money. You know what I'm saying? Back then I could understand it because you guys didn't have much wealth, influence, power in the household, so to speak. So I could understand it. The welfare problem. If a man abandoned a woman and children, the state didn't want to pay for their food and housing. By codifying marriage, they could legally force the husband to provide support. It was an early form of outsourcing Social Security to the family unit. Social engineering and control. Especially in the U.S., marriage laws were used to enforce racial and social hierarchies. From the mid 1600s through the 1960s, anti miscongeniate, how are we saying this? Miscongenation laws were used by the government to prevent interracial couples from marrying, proving that the marriage license was as much of a tool of exclusion as it was union. Okay. Race always got to play a part in something, in some history, don't it? Dumbest thing ever. Racism, boy. It's the dumbest thing ever. You don't like somebody just because of their skin has a different hue, it has a different tone than yours. Like, and so you just hate that person. Could be your best friend in the world. Nah, I ain't listening. I ain't listening to it. His skin has different tint than mine. It's crazy. It's fascinating because we often think of marriage license as a protection of our rights, but historically, it was more like the government tagging and tracking its citizens to make sure the money stayed where it belonged. Let's see. This is a good one, right here, y'all. This is a good one. This is a good one. So I'll ask the question: are arranged marriages still a thing in some parts of the world? Let's get into the answer. Not only are they still a thing, but if we look at the global data for 2026, they are actually one of the most common ways people get together. It's estimated that over 50% of marriages worldwide are arranged. Over 50% of marriages worldwide are arranged, totaling over 20 million active unions. Wow. That is a lot of people who've gotten married and they didn't have the choice in their partner. But here's the kicker. The way they are arranged has undergone a massive digital and cultural facelift. It's no longer just parents picking a stranger in a dark room. Okay, all right, let's learn something new here. I thought that's what it was, arranged marriages. The modern arranged spectrum. Today, we see a massive shift toward what sociologists call semi-arranged or arranged introductions. Okay, the halal, speed dating, and apps. In places like India, where 80% of marriages are still arranged, and throughout the Middle East, the process now involves matrimonial apps like Shade or Muzmatch. Thinking of it as a Tinder, but your parents have admin rights to your profile. Wow. That's interesting, man. A glorified Tinder for parents to be able to pick your partner, or at least have the introduction. Like, hey, I think this person, them being matchmaker, I think this person might be good for you. The veto power. In the modern version, the parents do the initial screening, based on values, education, and family background, but the kids have the final say. They might go on supervised dates or chat for months before committing. Supervised dates. Your parents being the chaperone, making sure their person that they may have chosen for you or introduced to you, make sure that date is going according to plan, and see if it, I guess ultimately if the child, approves of it, and be like, you know what, yeah, I see this person as my spouse. Okay, this is sex rate paradox. Here's a stat that always blows people's minds. The divorce rate for arranged marriages globally is often cited as less than 10%. Whoa! 40 to 50% for love marriages in the West. So that's what they call them. So marriages that are not arranged are called love marriages because you're going off of love, right? Which is very interesting because it's like with the arranged marriages, I guess, so to speak, you might not necessarily love that person, which is a foreign concept, right? To me as a Westerner, to me as an American, knowing that like we have so much autonomy pretty much over a lot of things in our lives. That's how our society is built. Great in a lot of ways, and I guess in other ways maybe not so much because um with you having free will, freedom of choice, autonomy, that means a lot more mistakes you can have. Um and I mean the stats show it, right? Less than 10% of people who have arranged marriages get divorced, which is kind of, just think about that for a second. Less than 10%. So like 1 in 10, less than 1 out of 10 people who have their partner picked out for them, their parents, pick out the partner for them. Less than out of 10 people actually ever split up. They don't, the marriages don't work out. Pretty much all of them work out. Wow. Um, but almost 40 to almost half percent of the marriages where people choose, they end up in a divorce. That is, it is mind blowing to me. Why do they still exist? It's not just about tradition. It's about outsourcing the labor of dating. Shared values. Families screen for long-term compatibility factors, religion, financial goals, lifestyle that butterflies and chemistry often ignore. Makes sense. Yeah. You're going off of more of a thinking about it from a rational, logical sense versus out of an emotional sense. Safety net. An arranged marriage isn't just a union of two people; it's an alliance between two families. If the couple hits a rough patch, they have massive support, working to keep them together. That makes a lot of sense to me now. Thinking about that, and I see that a lot with love marriages, where the marriages where the two partners they picked each other, and it makes a lot of sense that from arranged marriages, it's two families aligning together. They're on one accord. Because you see a lot of times, like for the love marriages, people they don't get along with their family. It might be like say the man doesn't get along with the wife's family, or the wife doesn't get along with the husband's family. And honestly, it's very sad because you thinking about think about the kids. So the kid they can't even go see one of their grandparents, or it just gets very awkward and weird when the two families aren't aligned. They don't get along. They don't do things together. They don't spread love to one another. And but it makes sense that in arranged marriages that's not the case because they picked them. So very interesting. Uh, Staying on the topic of arranged marriages, I have another question. Are arranged marriages more successful than marriages where the couple chose each other? If so, Why might they be more successful? Chat says this is the $1 billion question in relationships sociology. If we define success purely by longevity and low divorce rates, marriages statistically win by a landslide over love marriages where partners choose each other. Globally, the divorce rate for arranged marriages is estimated at less than 10%, whereas love marriages in Western cultures often hover between 40 and 50%, as we learned previously. Uh, let's see. The low expectations theory. In a love marriage, we often start at 10 on the excitement scale. We expect our partner to be our best friend, lover, intellectual equal, and co-parent. When the honeymoon phase fades, that drop can feel like a failure. In arranged marriages, many couples start at 2 or 3. They expect to be strangers who have to work to find common ground. Because the expectations start lower, even every small discovery, a shared joke, a mutual hobby feels like a win, causing satisfaction to climb over time rather than drop. Wow, that is beautiful rationale, uh, because it's something that it hits on. Um, it hits on something that I have a love for, which is expectation management. I think a lot of people's emotional struggles can be solved by just if they manage their expectations better, right? What is it? What they say? Pray for the best, hope for the best, pray for the best, expect the worst, right? You're not hoping that the worst happens, but you're just kind of expecting that there's a possibility of it, right? So just stepping into that mind frame of what that reality may look like for you, but you're obviously hoping and praying for the best. Um, so you're just managing your expectations in a more healthy manner. You know, if you expect things to be, it's like watching a movie, and I hate how this happens. It's a hot new movie out. Uh, it's all online, man. It's the next. It's the latest viral uh viral movie. Like everyone's talking about it. So you're like, man, all right, let me check this out. Everyone's saying it's the next biggest thing. It's the talk of the town. You watch it, you were struggling to get past the first 20 minutes of it. And then you get past it, and then you watch the whole movie, and you just left with this empty feeling of like you just let down because your expectations were here, you know? And so I think expectations is huge. And so that makes a lot of sense when it's talking about the low expectations theory of why certain arranged marriages work. Yeah, you guys start off as strangers, and you guys find out you're discovering each other. You're like, wow, we actually we like the same things. We like this or whatever, And it's not, yeah, they're a stranger to you, but if their parents, which your parents do know you, right? They known you from birth, and they have a marriage that works. They have experienced life. I would say, typically, honestly, now I'm thinking about it, I have not heard of many instances where the parents were very heavily involved or had a very opinionated idea about who you should date, who you should marry. More times, and usually the kid was like, nah, brushing them off, right? Because they love who they love. But typically, man, the parents are usually always right because one, they know you. They know you as a kid. They know you from birth. And two, especially if they're in a marriage themselves, they know what works. They know what doesn't. They know what kind of works long term, the type of partner you should be with long term that can work. They have many life experiences. They know, man. They're great resources in determining who you should marry, who you should spend the rest of your life with. So to them, they actually kind of would know, like, oh yeah, like say for me, my parents, oh yeah, Elliott, I know how he is, right? He likes somebody who's independent because he's independent himself. He ain't trying to babysit nobody. an adult. So if they were to arrange my marriage, they would pick somebody based on those qualities. It makes sense. Radical compatibility vetting. When you fall in love, your brain is flooded with dopamine, which can make you ignore massive red flags like different views on money, kids, or religion. In an arranged setup, the vetting committee, which is parents or the elders, is emotionally detached. They screen for practical compatibility, financial alignment, socioeconomic background, shared life goals, and values. In another instance, the value is not an option support system. In the West, if a couple fights, they might vent to the friends who say, you deserve better, leave them. In an arranged marriage, the entire extended family is invested in a union's success. If there's a conflict, two whole families often step in to mediate, provide childcare, or offer financial help. There's massive social pressure to stay, but also massive social support to make it work. Community, man. Listen, that's something we don't we're it's eroding in Western culture. It's community. We're so now we're so again thinking about when you think about some of the how the Western society, how the Western culture is set up, autonomy, free will, independency. It is to stand on one's own. You know, the American dream. If I work so hard, I can reach this point in life and do that. It's always like me, and I. And in the Eastern cultures, it's all about we, and never about my. You know, it is all about community, and I think there's really it's really it's really powerful. It's really impactful, man, when that is the core of a certain culture is togetherness, community, shared resources. How can we support, collective support? There's something to it, man. The choice paradox. Research by psychologists like Robert Epstein suggests that having fewer choices can actually lead to more happiness. When you choose your own partner, you might always wonder, is there someone better on Tinder? In an arranged marriage, there's a sense of relinquishing the search, which allows the couple to focus entirely on the person in front of them rather than the what ifs. I'll have to read more into Robert Epstein's his theory on that, because just from that little snippet, I don't just from that little snippet, I just combine two words. Just from that little snippet, I don't think that doesn't really sell to me. Um, okay, it's a fascinating trade off. Love marriages offer high intensity passion but are fragile, while arranged marriages offer high intensity stability but can sometimes lack that initial spark. And again, it says initial spark doesn't mean you can't have that spark um, and grow to love each other later on. Very interesting, man. Very interesting. Okay, remember I was talking about a dowry uh, earlier on? What is a dowry? Are dowries still a thing? And why are they not coming to America? This is one of those terms we hear in period dramas like Bridgerton or Downtown Abbey. But in many parts of the world today, it's not a plot point, it's a high stakes reality. What exactly is a dowry? To put it simply, a dowry is a transfer of wealth, money, jewelry, land, or goods from the bride's family to the groom or his family at the time of marriage. Historically, it served a dual purpose: the inheritance logic. In societies where women couldn't legally inherit land or property from their fathers, the dowry was her share of the family fortune, given to her upfront to ensure she had some security in her new home. Wow, so that's something I didn't know and something I didn't think about, because I mean I knew women didn't have much, wealth of their own, and but I didn't know that like that was one of the purposes of a dowry, is essentially a great way to a transfer of wealth, like a wheel. Essentially, it's like using a marriage as a wheel, um, as a trust fund. To move to for a father to move to his daughter. You know, is to give that onto her husband or her new a new husband, and that way she's able to get some of her father's inheritance. So there we go. The other purpose, the home starter logic, provided the new couple with the capital, cattle, furniture, cash to start a household from scratch, which is very helpful. Good God Almighty, very helpful. Are dowries still a thing? Yes, but they are increasingly controversial. While they are technically illegal in many countries, I know that. The practice is still deeply entrenched in parts of South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the Middle East, and North Africa. The modern version is often rebranded as gifts, cars, luxury watches, or high-end electronics. The dark side. In 2026, dowry inflation is a major issue. Boy, inflation done got to wedding gifts. Families sometimes spend 4 to 8 times their annual income on a dowry. When a bride's family can't pay up, it can lead to dowry violence or harassment by the in-laws. In India alone, thousands of dowry-related deaths are reported every year despite decades of prohibition. Man, it murking people for them wedding gifts. Why are they not coming in America? You might be surprised to learn that dowries were coming in colonial America, but they faded out for 3 reasons. The rise of the wage earner. In the 19th century, the economy shifted from landed wealth, where you needed a dowry to buy a farm, to wage labor. When men started earning cash in cities, making the injection of capital from a bride's father less essential for survival. Legal personhood. In the mid 1800s, U.S. laws changed to allow women to own property in their own names. Once a woman could inherit and own things directly, the roundabout system of a dowry became obsolete. The hope chest evolution. The American dowry didn't disappear, it just shrunk. It evolved into the hope chest, collecting linens and dishes before marriage, and eventually into the wedding registry. Instead of the bride's father paying the groom, the entire community chips in to buy the couple a toaster and a set of towels. Hey, look, chat. I don't know if you've been funny at the end right there, talking about instead of paying the groom, the entire community chips in. See, I'm thinking like, oh, the entire community chips in. This is about to end off on a good note. Yeah, no. The entire community of the wedded couple chips in, puts in their share to buy you a toaster and a set of towels. What the hell is that gonna do for my marriage leading forward? We gotta buy this house. We got this new kid, that's popped up on the scene. What the hell we gonna do? Some towels and a toaster. So I don't know if chat's being funny right there, but no, I'm sure some people still give good wedding gifts and things of that nature. Let's keep that up, man, because that does money. Unfortunately, is one of those things that causes divorce. And so if that is kind of that is kind of relieved a little bit, then maybe the couple can last longer. You know, it says it's a bit of a rebranding masterclass, right? We traded the dowry, where the father pays the groom, for the wedding industry. The father pays for a $40,000 party, and to stay right there, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with. Well, I guess I had a problem with it. Okay, the original. Okay, if we go back to the original purpose of a dowry, like I said, it was a good transfer of wealth. It's like, how am I supposed to give my inheritance to my daughter, when she's not legally able to own land? Okay, I can understand the dowry in that part. But the modern age, where it's like, oh yeah, I'll pay for the wedding. I'll pay tens of thousands of dollars for one event, which is where, let's be honest, y'all. A wedding in today's age, a wedding is to entertain your glorified host. You're entertaining your guests. You're paying for their meals. You're paying for the venue space to hold all of these people, and you're paying for all the things that go into the spectacle of it, the festivities, the activities, and all of the decorations and stuff. It's a lot of money for one day, just a couple hours. I'd rather pay for the honeymoon, give an experience, or pay $40,000 for one event, dude. That's a down payment and closing costs for a new home. You get what I'm saying? Uh, uh, shit. I don't know. $40,000. Like, you can buy some gold with that. You know what I mean? You could buy some. You can buy. Give me some stock in Amazon or something. You know, I'm like, I'm just off of that. I'm off of that. Oh, paying $10,000 for a wedding, and these people might not even make it. They might not even last long, unless you get some insurance on that or something. Like that money doesn't get reimbursed. So let's go with this. What is the average length of marriage among millennials? I asked this question because I'm a millennial, and I don't want to focus so much on an average length of marriage for other generations. The generation below me, which is Gen Z, they're what? I think their oldest is like what, 26 or something. That's still pretty. People get married in their early 20s and stuff like that. Still today, but typically, you know what I'm saying, people aren't getting married at that age. So I want to exclude them. I want to exclude the generations before me. So the Gen X, and then before them, baby boomers, because they coming from a different set of values, social values and stuff like that. They stuck together, and they was going through some horrific marital stuff. Like, I mean, like the man having a second family in the same town, sometimes in the same neighborhood, you know? And so, yeah, I'm gonna focus on millennials. I feel like that's the perfect generation time to focus on, to see what the average length of marriage is for that generation. Calculating the average length for millennials is a bit of a statistical trick because, frankly, most of them haven't finished their marriages yet. However, as of 2026, the data tells us a fascinating story of a generation that's actually rehabilitating the institution of marriage. Okay. While the average duration for an American marriage that ends in divorce is often cited as around 8 years, the famous 7-year itch is mathematically real. Millennials are changing the curve. Wow. The selectivity factor. Millennials are marrying much later than their previous generations. In 2026, the average age for first marriage is roughly 30 for men and 28 for women. By waiting, they are bypassing the high-risk years or early 20s. Because they are more established and financially stable before saying "I do," their marriages are proven to be more durable than the baby boomers were at that same age. The divorce rate drop. Contrary to the divorces everywhere narrative, the divorce rate has actually been falling for decades. Good. Largely driven by millennials. Good. Research indicates that millennials are about 24% less likely to divorce than boomers. They tend to view marriage as an achievement to be unlocked after they've sorted their careers and debt rather than a starting point for adulthood. Good. Debated test. Cohabitation. A major reason for the perceived length of these relationships is that millennials treat living together as the new first stage of marriage. They often live together for 2 to 5 years before getting a license. I agree with that. Yes. Well, it kind of takes away the traditional sense of marriage because, like I said, if you lay with somebody or claim that basically that you love them, that y'all would consider married back before marriage was part of the government institution. But no, man, you need to really figure out a person by living with them. That's the only way you truly know a person is you live with them. This pre-marriage period filters out incompatible couples before they become a legal statistic. When they finally do marry, the union is often already battle tested. There is a massive marriage divide in 2026. Millennials with college degrees have incredibly low divorce rates, with many projected to reach the 20-plus year mark at much higher rates than their parents. Those without degrees or with high financial stress still face shorter marriage durations, usually ending within the first 5 to 9 years if they do fail. So it looks like millennials aren't killing marriage; they are actually curating it. They're making it more exclusive and harder to get into, which in turn makes it last longer. That's great. In this question, it kind of well, it answered it. I'm asking what is the average age of marriage among baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials. The answer for millennials, for men, it was 30. It was age 28 for women, um, millennials. So let's see how that compares to other generations. The slow motion revolution of the American family. If we look at the data from the mid 20th century to 2026, the age at which people first say "I do" has been on a steady, relentless climb. We have the boomers, average age 20 for women, 23 for men. Gen X, average age 25, average age for men 27. Millennials, average age 28, and then average age 30 for men for millennials. To put this in perspective, in 1956, the median age gap of marriage hit its all-time historical low, 20 for women. By 2026, that number had jumped nearly 9 years. The baby or the boomer launch pad. For baby boomers, marriage wasn't the start of adulthood. You got married to leave your parents' house. Then you figured out your career and bought a home together. The Gen X pivot. Gen X was the first generation to significantly delay marriage as women entered the workforce and record numbers and higher education became the standard. The millennial capstone. For millennials, marriage is now a capstone event, the final piece of the puzzle. They want the degree, they want the career, and they want the financial stability before the marriage or before the wedding. And even in 2026, when you where you live changes those numbers drastically. In traditional states like Utah, the average age still looks a bit like the Gen X era, 24 to 25. But in career hubs like New York and DC, the average age for a first marriage is often pushing 32 or 33. We're looking at a nearly 10-year difference in life experience between a boomer bride and a millennial bride. One was essentially a teenager starting a life. The other is a 30-year-old with a decade of independent living under his or her belt. Um, okay. This is a curious question of mine. Are more people having kids before marriage in today's world? In 2026, the data shows that we have moved from a marriage first society to a parenting first one. So, see, my theory was right on this one. While births to unmarried parents have exploded since the mid 20th century, the vibe of those births has shifted dramatically in the last few years. Here's the breakdown of the marriage before baby landscape, the 40% threshold. In the United States, roughly 40% of all births now occur to unmarried women. Wow, that's a big statistic. That's like almost half. To put that in perspective, in 1960, that number was only 5%. We have normalized the idea that a marriage license isn't a prerequisite for a nursery. Man, that's a bar, chat. That's a bar. Wow. The rise of the unmarried partner, cohabitation. The biggest misconception is that these 40% of all single moms, or the biggest misconception is that these 40% are all single moms. In reality, a huge chunk of this group, about half, are couples who are living together in stable, long-term relationships, but just haven't felt the need to get the government involved yet. The trial run. Many millennials and Gen Z see cohabitation as a stage of commitment that is just as serious as marriage. The shotgun marriage is dead. In the 1960s, about 43% of unplanned pregnancies resulted in a quick wedding before the birth. Today, that number has plummeted to under 10%. People no longer feel social pressure to marry just because a baby is on the way. Okay, in a perfect world, in an ideal world, the way it should go is honestly, and to look at myself, it just happened to happen, right? Was it intentional? Wasn't fully conscious of it, I would say, me and my wife. So we kind of did it in a way I feel like is ideal, right? We dated for 3 years or dated for almost 3 years, got married, bought a home, and then had a baby. You know? So it was like that progression of stability. And it was like it we were on that trajectory. We were on a trajectory, right? Established our love for each other first, bought a home together. So cohabitated, bought a home together. Then we added the addition of a lovely baby girl to our family unit. And so, you know, I feel like ideally that's the way it should go, right? So to go back to talking about the shotgun marriages and not feeling social pressure just because you had a baby, it was like, oh, we should quickly go ahead and get married because we feel like that's the way it should be, right? We should be married and have a baby. No, if the baby comes first, if just by happenstance, if the baby comes first, don't feel that pressure to get married because because you guys honestly might not be compatible and things of that nature. You brought in you brought in a blessing, but stress into the mix as well with a child, right? Is a huge responsibility, and it will show a lot about yourself and about a lot you as a couple when you bring a child into the mix. And so work that stuff out first, see how that goes, and then go get married, but don't feel the pressure. Don't feel any social pressure to get married. Don't feel any social pressure to get married. It should be when it feels right, when you guys have stability, all right? And please do not have a baby or get married if relationships is rocky. If the relationship is rocky, do not think that a kid or getting married is going to solve that. I've seen that countless times where it never works. It just never works. Um, the education divide. This is where research gets really interesting. There's a massive marriage gap based on education level. So if you have a bachelor's degree, only about 11% of first-time moms with a college degree are cohabitating, and only 4% are truly solo parents. For this group, the traditional sequence education, career, then marriage, then kids is still very much the norm. Non-degree holders. For those without a college degree, the sequence is much more fluid. Births often come before or entirely independent of marriage. Global differences. Northern Europe. In places like France, Sweden, or Iceland, over 50 to 70% of children are born outside of marriage. Wow, that's interesting. In these cultures, the legal status of the parents is almost irrelevant to their social standing. Wow. In East Asia, conversely, in countries like Japan and South Korea, births outside of marriage remain incredibly rare, often under 3% due to intense social stigma. I would love to know what the divorce rates of those countries in East Asia that do not have kids outside of marriage because of the social pressure. We're seeing a world where marriage is becoming a luxury good or a capstone that you buy after you've already started your life and family rather than the foundation you build them on. I think that's a more healthy approach, to be honest, in my opinion. Okay, let's go to this. What are the statistics of people who married, got divorced, and reconciled? I'm very curious on this because we see this happen a lot with boyfriend and girlfriend. You just don't hear it a lot in marriage because it's a scoreboard at that point once you get married. This is the boomerang effect of relationships, and it's a segment that always gets listeners leaning in because it challenges the idea that the end is the end. Statistically, the path from a breakup back to the altar is narrow, but surprisingly sturdy. Here's what the numbers look like as of 2026, the reconciliation funnel. Most couples who break up don't make it back, but those who do tend to follow a specific statistical pattern, the separation stage. Between 10 and 15% of couples who formally separate, which means living apart but still legally married, eventually reconcile. The boomerang marriage. Only about 6% of divorced couples actually remarry each other. It sounds small, but when you consider millions of divorces filed, that's hundreds of thousands of couples giving it a second shot. When you put it like that, because I think 6% is a small number, but we think of 6% in the terms of I'm guessing it's talking about American this is American numbers, American population. So like what, roughly 300 million people. 6% of 300 million is a big number. It could be hundreds of thousands. The round two success rate. Here's the shocker: while the divorce rate for general second marriages, marrying someone new, is 60%, is over 60%. The divorce rate for couples who remarry each other is significantly lower, around 30%. So that's interesting. So the divorce rate for people who have a second marriage, but not with their um, the person that they married first originally, the divorce rate is over 60%. That's huge. But it's like cut in half. That number is cut in half if you just remarry the person you were originally married to. Um, so that's pretty refreshing to hear. You know, giving it a second go with someone you know. What they say is go with the devil you know versus the devil you don't. The numbers play out in that favor. Um, why do they come back? Research identifies three primary anchors that pulled divorced couples back together. The maturation effect. Many couples who married in their early 20s divorced because they simply weren't ready. I am one of those. Had a first marriage. In my I was 20. I was 20 when I got married, and I think honestly the primary reasons for that not working was because uh the factors of being young for one, and we were living separate. We were long distance. So I just think that had it made things complicated, you know. And so um but now I'm married to my second wife, and it's been a wonderful ride. Been married for 5 years. Uh and and we're not well, I'm 30. She'll be 30 later on this year. And so um I do think, yeah, it's tough, man. Marriage is tough no matter what age you're at, but uh definitely so in your early 20s. Um the child-centric bond. Children are the ultimate forced communication mechanism. Because exes have to talk about school, health, and holidays, they never truly disconnect, allowing old feelings to simmer and eventually reignite. Hey, keep them people talking, right? You keep them people talking, they might find your way back into your life or back into your bed. The grass is not always greener realization. After a few years in a modern dating pool, which we've discussed is a bit of a nightmare, many people realize that their ex spouse's flaws were actually quite manageable compared to the chaos to the open market. Very understandable. Yeah, grass is not always greener. Um. Okay. What's the thing you had down here for us? It says if 15% of separated couples can work it out, are we as a society giving up too early? Should we make the divorce process harder or longer to encourage that 15% to find their way back before they pay their lawyers? No. If you get to that decision, make that decision. Go back into the open market or do whatever it is that life presents you, and then if you have some old feelings spark back up, and y'all both are on the same page about reigniting that spark, that flame, and getting it back together, then do that. But no, we should not make the process any harder than it is, or any longer than it is. People don't need to stay together based off of external factors. You get what I'm saying? Like, it shouldn't be social pressure like, oh, it's wrong to get divorced. Or it shouldn't be like, oh man, this divorce process is gonna be so expensive or lengthy and we should just stay together. No. If y'all don't want to be together, break up, uh, and then go do life separately. And if y'all find your way back to each other, then so be it. But no, we should not make the process more complicated. Absolutely not. I think it's there already. um, let's go with this question. Our last question. Last question, y'all. As I ask, as best as you can, analyze how many boyfriends and girlfriends would be considered divorced if they were considered married, given how boyfriends and girlfriends can break up as many times without it counting against them, since the government does not recognize them as a couple. And this is what chat says. This is the hidden divorce rate. And honestly, it's the most honest way to look at modern romance. If we applied the legal standards of the 1950s today's dating world, the divorce statistics would be absolutely astronomical. To get a real answer, we take a look at serial monogamy, the practice of having a stream of committed exclusive relationships one after the other. The shadow divorce stats. If we define a breakup as the dissolution of a committed relationship lasting at least 1 year, the point where lives usually start to merge, the numbers tell a wild story. The average divorce count. By the time the average person reaches age 30, they had approximately 3 to 5 serious relationships. If those had been legal marriages, the average person will be a quadruple divorcee before they even hit their prime. A quadruple divorcee. So again, because the reason I ask this is because I feel like people who we look at people say they like, man, this is my third wife or this is my third husband. I've been married 3 other times before, and they're giving it another try. We look at that person as like, man, they're the problem. In which that could be true. They could be the problem. But I think the boyfriends and girlfriends, people who aren't married, who are dating, don't have the same negative stigma because you could be on your 15th boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, in 3 years, 4 years, 3, 4 years, basically almost 4 to 5 boyfriend or girlfriends per year, over the span of a couple years, and no one bats an eye to it. No one thinks about it. It doesn't get brought up. Why? Because it's not a paper trail of it. But if it was, yeah, people would have been on the third or fifth marriage by now.
Oh shit, not good.
The cohabitation factor. About 70% of couples now live together before or instead of marriage. Sociologists often call a cohabitating breakup a divorce light. If we counted these, the divorce rate in America wouldn't be 40%. It will likely be closer to 85 or 90% of all committed unions. Why the boyfriend-girlfriend label acts as a safety net. The reason we don't feel like failures after a breakup is because the government hasn't validated the relationship yet. This creates two distinct psychological worlds, low barrier to exit. Without the $15,000 legal fee and a judge, couples break up over things that married people are forced to work through. In a sense, the lack of government contract makes the relationship more fragile, but also more honest. You are only there because you want to be, not because you're legally tethered. The pro-selection filter. As we discussed earlier, millennials and Gen Z are divorcing their boyfriends and girlfriends so that they don't have to divorce their spouses. They are essentially outsourcing the failure to their 20s. If the average person dates seriously for 10 years before marrying and has a breakup every 2 years, they are essentially divorcing 4 times to find the one person they stay with. We live in a culture that celebrates the marriage but treats the serious breakup as just a footnote. But emotionally, a 3-year relationship ending can just be as devastating as a legal divorce. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So I say all that to say, yes, date. And seriously, date before you make that determination of getting married, but also just keep in mind, don't frivolously do it. Don't just date just to be dating. Date with intent. Date with intent. You should be dating this person with the kind of the expectation in mind that this can be long term. Like, I'm not going to date somebody. I'm talking about me here. Like, I'm not going to date somebody that I don't see as my future wife, because otherwise it'll be pointless. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Especially, in high school, middle school, I get it. You date somebody, man, that ain't about to be your wife or husband. It could be, but more times than not, it's not, man, because you're your kid still. But as an adult, if I don't see you as my future wife, why are we together? Why am I dating you? I mean, why am I dating you? Seriously. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is our Page in the Prompt episode speaking on marriage. Like, share, comment, subscribe for more content. You know, this is modern day philosophy where we dive into social topics, curious topics, and with the help of with chat. And so, thank you all for tuning in. Tune in next time. Until then, we close this chapter of Page Full of Life. Thank you.